John has an interview for his dream job tomorrow. He has spent his life dreaming of becoming a branch manager in a bank. Finally, his dream is close to becoming a reality. He does not want to risk making a mistake during the interview. However, this is his first interview. He does not know the questions he will be asked, or whether he is ready for a surprise question. John is a bit worried. He wants to talk with someone and suddenly Martin has come to his mind. Martin is John's best friend who always comes up with great ideas every time John is seeking his advice. John decides to give Martin a call.
Hi Martin, how are you doing? Well, I am having an interview for my dream job tomorrow. You know, I am really want to secure this job. Do you have any idea of how to help me with that?
Oh well, my friend, I certainly will. But what is the position, John?
Oh, I should have told you before. This is the manager position of Heaven Bank in my area.
Okay, let me think. How about we do a mock-up interview together? I will act as the interview panel you will face tomorrow. You try to think on your feet and answer my questions.
Martin, that sounds brilliant. But
if you really want this exercise to be effective, you need to ask me difficult questions. Ask me questions you know I may not know how to answer. Do not be nice to me. The harder you are on me today, the better prepared I will be tomorrow. Push me beyond my limit, and break me up today so that I can stand strong tomorrow.
Don't worry. I will see you this afternoon for the mock-up interview.
As promised, Martin came to John for the mock-up interview on that afternoon. Martin began asking John questions. Some of them John knew would never be asked in his interview. Martin knew very little about the job of a branch manager in a bank. His knowledge and imagination of the questions he should ask John were limited by his experience. He had never been in a bank environment, and so he did not know the issues a branch manager faces.
Martin, do you think we need to be more specific on the issues of a branch manager?
Oh yeah, you know I have never worked in a bank, so it is a bit tough to be more specific. Yes, John, do you remember Amy? She used to work at Commonwealth Bank as a branch manager. How about if we ask her to join us?
That is a great idea, Martin. Let us call Amy.
Amy was happy to help John. John was torn apart by Amy and Martin's questions. The questions from Amy were spot on, and John was surprised by the diversity of challenges a branch manager in a bank faces. The questions from Martin focused on general personality and management skills that are vital for the job. They provide John with a set of challenges he did not anticipate. Amy's questions triggered questions in Martin's mind, and vice versa. At the end of the exercise, John thanked Martin and Amy, while sweating. On the following day, John went to the interview. At the end of the interview, he was offered the job. John was very happy and he invited Martin and Amy to his favorite bar to celebrate the event.
Finally, I have secured my dream job. Yeah, I am so happy. Let us celebrate together.
How many questions did we ask that the interview panel asked as well?
None.
Oh no.
So we did not help you much. We have pretty much wasted your time?
No. On the contrary, without the mock-up interview I would not have secured this job.
How so?
After the interview I realized that the value of the mock-up interview we did together was not predicting the questions the panel would ask me. It actually prepared me for life. It prepared me to think on my feet, to manage surprise questions, and focus on how to answer them, rather than being shocked by them. It showed me how to link what I know and my comfort zone with the unknown questions that I could not anticipate. Thank you, Martin and Amy, for being a great red team.
Although the mock-up interview has helped John to get his dream job, Martin has never expected the way his initiative affected John. His initial idea was to help John with questions that the interview panel may ask. But it turns out that the real benefit was to prepare John to think on his feet when being pushed out of his comfort zone. In Martin's mind, a number of open questions have raised. How to push John out of his comfort zone if there was not Amy? What sort of questions would he ask if the interview was not for a bank manager position? And in more general, is there any common principle to design such questions? Martin believed that there is computable way to organize such interview exercises. And he was right. The occasion had brought him to a book entitled Computational Red Teaming, Risk Analytics and Big Data to Decisions Intelligent Systems. Martin was delighted. He decided to share his journey on computational red teaming with John and Amy.
Hey guys, the first thing in computational red teaming we will look at is the concept of trade-off. This is because it is important to understand how conflicting objectives are treated from the decision support science perspective. Let me illustrate the concept through the following scenario. Amy is watching a movie on YouTube in full HD. And she started chatting with her friend about the movie on Skype. And now she wants to record a live show on IPTV in full HD. But that is impossible because she will need another 8 meg throughput while her home line is only 10 meg. What can she do? There is a trade-off here. To keep one program in full HD, Amy will lose the other one. Alternatively, she can suffer the quality of the programs to keep both of them. As you can see, there are 5 possibilities as shown in the graph. If one program is in high quality, then the other one will be in low quality, or she can have both of the programs in standard quality. This is her choice. But importantly, Amy can decide herself on what she wants. The trade-off in this case is internal. On another day, Amy wants to watch a YouTube movie in full HD. But her brother Jacob is playing online 3D game with his friend. That is impossible because she will need an 8 meg throughput, while her home line is only 10 meg. What can she do? There is a trade-off here. If Amy wants her program in full HD, Jacob will have to stop playing the online game in 3D. Alternatively, she can suffer the quality of the program to SD and Jacob is to switch the game to 2D mode, as shown in the graph. But importantly, Amy cannot decide herself on what she wants. She has to negotiate with Jacob. The trade-off in this case is external.
John and Amy really enjoy the journey. Now they know that risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. While trade-off is important when weighting different objectives, uncertainty is the main factor that affects them. Let us see how Martin and Amy think about uncertainty.
Okay, Martin, you have just mentioned about branching point uncertainty and deep uncertainty. I am not quite clear with that. Can you give me an example?
Okay, Amy. Branching point uncertainty is a type of uncertainty that you can capture with likelihoods. For example, the uncertainty of whether it will rain tomorrow is a branching point uncertainty. This is because you can tell there is p% it will rain tomorrow and consequently 1 minus p% that it will not. A deep uncertainty is, on the other hand, something you cannot capture with likelihood models. This is either because you do not know the likelihood of each possibility, or even you do not know what the possibilities are, and how many are they. For instance, factors impacting policy decisions are uncertainty of this type.
Oh well, thanks Martin.
In classical decisions theory, uncertainty is considered an uncontrollable factor. But Martin has a different view on it. He thinks uncertainty can be used to influence and shape decision processes. Let us see how Martin explains his view.
Martin, traditionally we see uncertainties as external factors, and to cope with them we try to design robust and resilient solutions. However, in CRT, you introduce the concept of controlling uncertainty. Can you illustrate this point, please?
Okay, Amy. Let us look at the following example. Your company has to make an investment decision. to keep Australian dollars or to buy US dollars for the next 6-month investment term. The exchange rate history over the last 6 months shows that the chance for Australian to US dollar rate to increase in the next 6-month time is 50%. Since the choice is 50-50 in this case, the traditional decision-making approach will suggest any action between the two, that is a random choice. In CRT, however, we will try to lower the uncertainty by obtaining more information. In particular, for instance, we know that if more people investing in one particular currency, its value will likely rise against other currencies. Such information can be gathered, for instance, through an intentionally designed virtual investment game on mobile phones. By analyzing the players' decisions, their age group, profession and education background, we can obtain the investment trend and therefore reduce the uncertainty in our investment decision. Certain information about the investment trend can also be intentionally made available to the company's competitors. In doing so, we can influence the decisions of our competitors in a way we prefer. That is how uncertainty can be controlled.
Thanks, Martin.
John and Amy now have a better understanding of how uncertainty can be used to influence decision processes. However, as risk-driven decision makers, they need to know how to qualitatively assess the risk of each decision they make. Let us see how Martin shares his view about risk with John and Amy.
Hey Guy, I have found this risk equation in the Computational Red Teaming book that I am reading. I think while the term effect in this equation can be quantitatively interpreted as the magnitude of damage, the term vulnerability is not as that intuitive. Look at the definition in the book. Vulnerability is the possibility evaluated through the level of access or exposure a hazard or a threat has to a critical component of a system. Amy, what do you think about this definition?
Martin, the definition of vulnerability seems confusing to me. Can you explain it in more detail, please?
Sure, Amy. But before I explain what vulnerability in more detail is, let us watch a short animation together.
Okay, Martin, I've got the point. In that scenario, the bank seems not vulnerable when the threat is an amateur boy. But when the threat is a professional robber with gun, then the story is different. However, the presence of the policeman denied the robbers access to the bank.
That is absolutely correct, Amy. Vulnerability of a system should be assessed at the level of the threats or hazards that the system is exposed to. The level of a threat is determined by its capacity, such as the gun and the robbing experience in this scenario, and also the opportunity, in this case the present or absent of the policeman. Is that all clear to you?
Thanks, Martin.
Guys, please remember that vulnerability is evaluated under the risk lens. That is, we evaluate those actions that produce negative impact on the system objectives. These actions can be intentional or unintentional. If they are intentional, we refer to them as threats. In contrast, if the actions are unintentional, we call them hazards. Another important concept is critical element. Not every element or component of a system has the same level of vulnerability. There are some elements, the damage of which will affect the system more than the others. Let us look at the human body as a system. The purpose of human body as a system is to stay alive. Therefore, a critical element of a human body is an element, removal or damage of which will cause the death of the human body. An example of such an element is the heart.
John and Amy now have gone through a classical view of risk. This is the time for them to apply some of the knowledge they have learned. Let us join Martin and Amy in their first problem.
Okay, Amy, we have just gone through the classical view of risk. Now let us do an interesting exercise. Look, assuming we have 7 critical information centers to protect. V1 is here, in Canberra, V2 is here, and subsequently V3, V4, V5, V6 and V7. The likelihoods of each center will be attacked are the following. Center V1 is attacked with the probability of 0.1, center V2 is also 0.1, center V3 is 0.2 and so on. We also have an expected protection cost for each center. And here in this column, the estimated magnitude of damage if the centers are compromised, as you can see. Our budget is 220 millions. Amy, can you calculate the risk and decide which centers we can protect?
Well, I think this exercise is straightforward, Martin. First, I use the classical risk formula to calculate the risk value of each center. For example, the risk value of center V1 is the product of the likelihood of the center is being attacked and the magnitude of damage. So the risk value of V1 is 0.1 times 1 million, which equals 100,000. Similarly, I can compute the risk values of V2, V3, V4 and so on. Second, I will rank the risk values as shown in this table. The rest is easy. I match the budget with the total protection cost and decide which center we can protect. In this case, of course, center V1, V6 and V7.
Well done, Amy. But have you seen any problem with this approach?
Absolutely no, Martin.
Okay, I will show you where the problem is in a minute. Okay, Amy, when we calculate the risk using the classical formula, we have made an implicit assumption that the risk of being compromised of each center is independent from each other. This assumption, in many realistic situations, is very weak. For instance, look, if in this case the data centers are physically interconnected, which is very likely in reality, and between them are trusted relationship like between domain and subdomain, then we are in trouble. This is because if someone can compromise V3 or V5, they can attack V1 and V6 with ease. Therefore, the investment decision that you have made may have a problem.
Oh, I see. Thank you, Martin. You are genius.
The security investment exercise has revealed a critical issue in traditional vulnerability and risk assessment approach: the assumption of risk independence. It shows that risk and vulnerability should be assessed in dynamic context while taking into account reciprocal relation between interdependent entities. Let us join Martin, John and Amy to see how they found solutions for this issue.
Martin, I think to solve the problem you just shown Amy, we can try a similar approach to what we used for preparing my job interview.
John, I have not got your idea. Can you be more specific?
Yeah, I think we can imagine different security breaking scenarios, assess risk and vulnerability in each scenario, rank them, and decide our investment options based on the ranking.
That sounds great, John. But the question here is how to design these scenarios. Let me look at the Computational Red Teaming book to see if is there any idea.
A few days have passed. Let us see if Martin have found anything interesting.
John, I have found a great guidance in the book. It is called Challenge Analytics. It helps shaping my thinking on how to design meaningful questions, situations, or scenarios for risk and vulnerability assessment.
It sounds really interesting to me. Can you share with us, please?
Certainly. First, we look at the definition of challenge. A task is challenging when the distance between the aggregate skills required to do the task and the aggregate skills that agent possesses is positive and small. Here, the concept of distance is not a simple quantitative metric, and the aggregate of skills is not the sum of skills.
John and Amy have gone together with Martin through an interesting journey on challenge analytics. They are fully occupied by the topic, so on the way back home, their discussion is about nothing else but the challenge. Let us join John and Amy.
John, what do you think about the concept of challenge that Martin told us in today's lecture? I'm still quite confused with things such as aggregated skill, distance between skill sets, a challenge that is not a challenge, etc.
Okay, Amy, I will try to give you my understanding about these terms and concepts. I think the best way is to revise them via examples. What do you think?
Absolutely, John.
Well, Amy, can you swim?
No, I can't. Can you teach me, John? I really want to be able to swim.
Sure, Amy, but I will use this opportunity to explain the terms and concepts in our today's lecture. So stay tuned.
Okay.
Now let me put you in a challenge to swim 1,000 meters in our next month's swimming carnival.
Oh gosh, that is impossible, John.
Okay, how about 25 meters instead?
That sounds more doable to me.
Great, let's go to swimming pool. Amy, I will familiarize you with the theory first. Human swimming typically consists of repeating a specific body motion, or a swimming stroke to propel that body forward. Most strokes involve movements of all major body parts: arms, legs, hands, feet, and head. For instance, you need to move your arms and legs like this in breaststroke, or like this in front crawl. You will see that you already have all individual skills required to swim, including arm, legs, and head movement. But the point here is, to be able to swim, you will need to put these movements in rhythmic and synchronized order. I emphasize that rhythm and synchronization are absolutely essential.
I see. So that is not a simple combination of skills.
That is right. Swim is an aggregated skill, and that is not the sum of skills, as you can see. Skills are synthesized to create new aggregated skills. A skill to swim 1,000 meters is a bigger distance than that a skill to swim 25 meters has, of course, from the standpoint of a swim learner as you. You will need more resource, that is hundreds of practicing hours, to be able to swim 1,000 meters. So a challenge to swim 1,000 meters in our next month's swimming carnival, for you in this case, is not a challenge. It is too far from your current skill set given the time constraint.
I see. So a challenge should facilitate the creation of new aggregated skills?
Yeah, within a given resource constraint. A challenge is not a challenge if no new aggregated skill is derived from it. So derivability is an essential condition.
I think now I have a better understanding of the concept of challenge, aggregated skills, and distance between skill sets. So John, do you think the bigger the distance, the more difficult the challenge is?
Yes, as far as the challenge is still a challenge. I think a challenge is difficult if the path to the new aggregated skill involves synthesizing of more than one skill sets, and also, the synthesization process is nonlinear, or the resource constraint is tight.
I agree, John. So far we have talked about challenge from the skill point of view. Do you think if we expand the concept of skill sets to bodies of knowledge, sets of rules, or sets of technical parameters, we can generalize the concept of challenge to challenge a theory, a plan, or a technology?
You are absolutely right, Amy. I am now convinced that you have understood the concept of challenge and CRT. Now let me challenge you. Can you come up with examples about challenging a theory, a plan, or a technology?
Let us challenge Martin instead.
Martin was surprised at how quick John and Amy have picked up the concept of challenge, when Amy challenged him with an example about challenging a technology. However, there is still an important thing that Martin wants to tell John and Amy. Let us follow their discussion.
Guys, there is an important thing that I want to tell you. In decision-making context, the process of designing a challenge should be driven by risk thinking. From the definition of risk as the impact of uncertainty on objectives, clearly the risk picture is synthesized by analyzing uncertainty and objectives. The risk picture needs to be challenged to manage risk. The challenge analytics component is responsible for finding actions that can have impact on objectives, both positively and negatively. Also, the process of deconstructing system-level risk to its constituent parts, assessing and evaluating the impact of possible courses of actions on them, is called risk analytics. Together with challenge analytics, risk analytics is the cornerstone of computational red teaming. We will discuss about how these two cornerstones are used to build a so-called cognitive cyber symbiosis process to improve effectiveness of decision-making probably next week. What do you think?
We look forward to joining you, Martin.
Amy and John were excited. They know that their journey on computational red teaming has just begun. A new horizon of knowledge is waiting for them to discover. What have John and Amy discovered? What challenges will they meet on their way? Let us follow them on part 2, coming soon.